Now, this movie is directed by Adam Wingard. It's written by Terry Rossio, Simon Barrett, and Jeremy Slater, and it's starring Godzilla and King Kong. Fuck you mean? You think I'm gonna name these actors? This movie is starring Godzilla and King. I'm just playing. Rebecca Hall is in this movie. Brian Tyree Henry's here. Dan Stevens is here. Definitely want to shout them out. But come on, it's about Godzilla and King Kong. But this is the fifth installment in the MonsterVerse franchise from Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers Pictures. This is the 38th film to feature Godzilla. This is the 13th film to feature King Kong, and this is now the third time in live action that these two have crossed paths. Obviously, this is coming off of Godzilla versus Kong, which came out 3 years ago, right in the midst of the COVID pandemic, in a time where blockbusters and big movies and franchises felt uncertain. But Godzilla versus Kong came out, did really well in a time where people were not going to movie theaters, but that was a movie that was somewhat of an exception to the rule, and so it was successful enough to go ahead and continue this franchise that they've been working with for the past decade or so. And so again, this is now the fifth one in this MonsterVerse franchise. The future remains to be seen in terms of where they go. But with all of that out the way, man, we got a chance to go check out this movie this last week, this latest installment. I'll pass it over to you. What did you think about Godzilla Kong: The New Empire?
Oh, happy Easter. Yeah, Jesus died so Godzilla and Kong could be on their team together. Heck yeah. No, I'm just playing. This movie, I honestly had a blast. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. And to be honest, I think most people have that expectation. Hopefully they have that expectation, but we've known for a while these movies have not necessarily always been about the human counterparts of these worlds. But what actually this movie does okay is they keep the same kind of Native American tribe girl from Godzilla versus Kong, and they continue to use them. And I think that was useful. We didn't have to learn like new characters we necessarily didn't care about at all. It was still a sliver of somebody we had known, and they embedded her in the story in a way that I didn't see coming. But it's all about Godzilla and Kong, and really, to be honest, this is I think this is Kong's movie featuring Godzilla, which is fine. I thought that was okay. Kong technically has a little bit more of I think a human interaction and personality because of that. Godzilla kind of just wants to smoke all the time. That's what Godzilla is here to do, and I think they have that balance, and I think they do it pretty well. This movie has a ton of CGI, and usually we'll get on this podcast and be like, oh my God, CGI was terrible. There was too much of it. They didn't do good. But I'm here to say, I think they did a damn great job of communicating these characters onto the screen in such a long runtime. There are movies like this where you do have to have a lot of CGI, and sometimes it can get maybe exhausting knowing that you have to weave in and out of like whatever the human world is and seeing these big monstrous creatures or whatever on screen. But they did a really good job, I think, of embedding us in the world that they had created in this movie, in the MonsterVerse. There was several sequences 20 minutes at a time where we were literally looking at probably nothing but mainly CGI, mainly apes, mainly weird creatures, and it worked. Something else I thought that was really cool was the dialogue between them. There was never any real dialogue between monsters, right? People have seen the trailer. There's a baby Kong in it, and there's of course the Kong that we know, our King Kong. And a lot of times when they communicate, there's no words. They look at each other. They may give us some kind of sign language. They may do something, and it works. You know what they're trying to say, you know what they're trying to do, and it makes sense for the story. A lot of it was emotion driven. They're using the CGI to play with faces and to play with all these things to say this is how these characters, what they're trying to say, and this is their emotions. It made sense and it worked. This movie was it was fun. It was just fun to watch. It's what I needed it to be. It was Godzilla Kong teaming up to fight some other bads. The Scar King that we got, who was actually pretty freaking violent. One thing I do want to note as well is I like how the Scar King in this movie, again, this is no spoilers or anything, but the Scar King was a little bit smaller in size compared to Godzilla and Kong, but he still commanded the room as a villain. I thought that was cool because they could have easily gone like the Mecha Godzilla route, where it's like this dude is too big, we can't fight him. They didn't go that route. Instead, they created more of a lore around the villain and executed. And yeah, man, yeah, I had a blast. I think this movie, if you take it for what it is, it's great. It's not some huge convoluted we're 15 storylines in thing going on. There is kind of a subplot with the Native American girl that I said. All of that stuff. It doesn't work 100%, but works as much as I needed it to. And yeah, it was Godzilla and Kong giving hands, and that's exactly what I was here for. So I enjoyed myself. I had a blast. And I laughed. And yeah, man, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Godzilla Kong the New Empire. This movie is absolutely preposterous. It's ridiculous. It's dumb. It's over the top. But I had so much fun watching it because it ultimately just felt like a throwback to the Showa era of Godzilla movies, which were completely ridiculous and
It's
just
ridiculous.
weird and nonsensical and just fun movies to watch. And that's what this ultimately was. Are the characters useless most of the time? Absolutely. Do you give a fuck about any of them? Pretty much no. Could I do even with less amount of time spending with them? Probably so. But beyond all of that, that doesn't take away any of my enjoyment from this movie because when the shit gets going, when the battle is time to begin, when you see the kaiju in this movie, you see the titans in this movie come face to face, they get it right. They do what they need to do to make this a completely satisfying and entertaining cinematic experience. And I loved it for that. I loved it for the fact that it just knew exactly what it was. It didn't try to be something that it wasn't. Obviously, we just got Godzilla -1 a few months ago, which you can probably classify as a prestige kaiju movie at this point. This isn't that. This is meant to be a roller coaster. This is what Martin Scorsese was talking about a few years ago. And I think that that's okay because we need these two. There's room for these to exist. And this was just a fun, mindless time at the movies. And I mostly enjoyed everything that I saw. It did take a while to get to that place. There were moments early on in the movie where I was worried, like, okay, if we don't kick this into high gear really soon, I'm going to check the fuck out. But luckily, I think that the pacing is right on the money to keep you invested, to keep you interested in the Titans, because that's why you're here. And this movie, interestingly enough, is certainly much more of a King Kong movie than it is a Godzilla movie. But I'm actually okay with that for two reasons. One, technically, Kong in this universe has only had one solo movie. King Kong, with Kong, what was it, Skull Empire
Skull
or Skull
Island.
Island?
Skull Island.
That was the only movie before Godzilla versus Kong. However, Godzilla had the original movie in 2014, and then of course Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then once again fought King Kong in Godzilla versus Kong. So we've seen him a little bit more. But secondly, again, we just got Godzilla -1, which satisfied an urge that I didn't even know existed for myself. And so I got plenty of great, weighty, serious Godzilla in that film, which gave us, quite possibly one of the greatest kaiju movies ever made. And so I was fine with Godzilla taking a backseat here. I mean, the screen time, I looked this up online, only 8 minutes of screen time. Not that he had a ton of screen time in the other ones. It's like 11 or 10 minutes in the other ones, but even more time was taken off of here to really just like give that opportunity and give that spotlight to Kong and everything that he was dealing with. So much so that this movie kind of became Planet of the Apes for like 2/3 of it, which was welcome because it was somewhat different to incorporate Titans to this degree, to incorporate apes, which are a typical cinematic trope that we see elsewhere, most notably, of course, in the Planet of the Apes franchise. But then to bring it into this world, to this Hollow Earth universe, to showcase what they mean in the existence of all these kaiju monsters that exist within this specific Godzilla universe, I thought it was really good. I liked it. And ultimately, by the time you get to the big battles at the end and the fighting, I mean, look, if Godzilla suplexing motherfuckers and having King Kong wear a bionic arm, if that sounds appealing to you, then this movie is absolutely for you. I mean, that bionic arm, which they tease in the trailer, it might as well be the Infinity Gauntlet at certain points in time. Like the last movie, he gets an axe. Now he gets a bionic arm. Like Kong is just getting souped up with so many weapons. It's ridiculous. But I loved it for that because it just goes into complete camp territory. And I think Adam Wingard is he's a good director for all of this stuff. He has a really good handle. He directed Godzilla versus Kong. I really enjoyed that movie for what it was. And now he obviously has showcased that he loves these characters in this franchise because this is all Showa era stuff. This is all very much a throwback to the 60s and the 70s era of that Godzilla character where you would just get movie after movie of new kaijus coming in, and we're just destroying everything possible, and we're fighting pillar to post all over the fucking world. And that's what I want to see at this point. If they can keep it up at this pace, give me 5 more of these. I'll be good with that. I know that this is not for everybody. I recognize that this certainly does not speak to the personal taste of certain people, because it is not a smart movie. It's a very dumb movie. Like, it's meant to be that way though. But you know, for me, I have a bias towards all of this. I grew up with Godzilla, very much a character that I feel close with. I've seen all the movies multiple times at this point. And so anytime I come into these, I just let go and I just let loose and just allow myself to have fun. Now, if it's bad, it's bad. We'll never get past that, because even those earlier movies like 2014 and even Godzilla, the King of the Monsters, too much human shit, too much not good human shit. We see what good human shit can be in these movies, Godzilla Minus One being the best case example of that. But those movies don't do human story great, or at least they start off great and then they fumble it. They just completely just tarnish it for what they built up there. This one, they pull back on that because they know that we don't care about these characters. They're so insignificant and unimportant to the larger story. Let's just get to the stuff that we want to see here. And ultimately, I think it results in a really satisfying experience. So I enjoyed it. I do want to ask you a follow-up though, because it's interesting this time that we are in. We kind of talked about this with Godzilla Minus One, but it's a new day. It's a new era for this character specifically. Of course, Kong by association, but to come off of Godzilla Minus One a few months ago, now an Academy Award winning movie, something that is so successful, one of the highest grossing Japanese movies of all time. It's just crazy how successful it was, but it was such a serious movie for all the right reasons. We loved it for that. And now you fast forward a mere 4 or 5 months later, Godzilla Kong is essentially a cartoon or a video game. Like it is not meant to be serious in any stretch of the imagination. What are your thoughts on that? Just that we have these two diametrically opposed representations of this character and of this universe, and you can throw in Monarch 2 as another addition to that, where it's like examining things on a more human level. It's a part of the MonsterVerse, but there's not as much kaiju action in that movie as you would see in these big budget tempos. How do you feel about just the state of the character and the fact that we just get so many different flavors of Godzilla all throughout our cinematic landscape?
Yeah, I think it's cool that we have a character that we feel like we can do that with. This movie is doing very well right now. In case people didn't know, like it's kind of it's doing what it needs to do in the box office, and I think part of that is the Godzilla Minus One, is the Monarch, the things that you were just talking about. And I think that is literally telling us as an audience, as people that look at this stuff, as like this dude Godzilla can fit in whatever medium we need him to fit into, or we would like him to fit into, as long as we, I think lean into whatever we're doing, right? Like you said, Godzilla Minus One, it's the more drama, it's the more the human parts of it. It's darker, it's a little deeper. That can exist. But also, like you said, show era Godzilla, sometimes we just want to see Godzilla give hands. Because that's what, in some ways, Godzilla was kind of born from both. And in some ways, we're taking the route of both in being able to accentuate the positives of both. And I think it's a really cool state to be in, because now Godzilla Minus One, we might get another one of those soon. Can't wait. I mean, the movie's phenomenal, but also Godzilla and Kong giving hands to other, pretty much, y'all, I'm not no sport, but like they are literally creating the Titan Avengers right now in these movies, and it's fun. It's stupid, but it's very fun, and I think there's room for that too. So I just really love that landscape. I love that we can have all the versions of Godzilla, and to have it make sense too. It's not like you said, this movie's not for everybody. Everybody's not walking into this. Everyone won't see this movie and be like, oh yeah, I wish there was. I wish there were, or some people are going to be like, oh, I wish there was more story. I wish it was smarter. Nah, not that's not what I wanted. I just wanted Godzilla and Kong giving hands, and that's exactly what I got. And so, yeah, I love that we can weave in and out of these worlds. So, not necessarily effortlessly, but I love that we can weave in and out of these worlds the way that we are right now. It's a really good time, I think, to be a Godzilla fan.
Speaks to the longevity of the character. This is the 70th anniversary of Godzilla. The first film came out in 1954, so we are experiencing a moment, or excuse me, 60th anniversary. I think that film actually came out in 64. But yeah, we're in a moment right now to celebrate the birthday of Godzilla, and just to speak to the longevity of how long that character, that IP, has been around, and how much he's permeated and persisted all throughout, of course, Japanese culture, and then translating it into American culture. The fact that Toho trusted Legendary Pictures for the past decade to really just take this character into a different direction, especially after the debacle of the 1998 movie, I think it speaks volumes to the fact that they were like, you know what, it's time to evolve and do something different, and allow an American company to step in and provide their own takes and their own perspective on this character, and we're going to entrust that to them. And I think it's paid dividends. Obviously, these movies from a financial standpoint have been the most successful for the character ever, and this one is just doing ridiculous numbers. It has the biggest opening of the year so far of 2024. It eclipsed
Going
Dune,
crazy.
which I want to also just shout out Legendary Pictures, who are also the production company behind Dune, and the month that they've had, the fact that Dune opened the way that it did just a few short weeks ago, and here we are at the end of March leading into April,
Mm-hmm.
and Godzilla Kong, The New Empire, is so far the biggest movie of the year. It won't last for the entire year, but I mean, it's just ridiculous that it comes out with a $194 million global opening, $80 million
Crazy.
stateside. They're obviously going to do more of these because of that. But again, to just say that Godzilla as a character, as a franchise, is in such a healthy place, and now by association, these other characters like King Kong, like these other Titans that they're obviously introducing here, weaving in and out of the movie, won't give away some other surprises that occurred in this movie. I mean, they're building up a great roster of characters to tap into to just do more movies. Destroy All Monsters is going to come. That's going to come where we're just going to get an
Mm-hmm.
all-out kaiju battle. Whatever city is going to be host to that, I pray to think who the fuck can handle that, because this one, my God, there's so much destruction and death and things that just happen on the side of the camera where it's like, yo, I'm pretty sure like 100,000 people just got killed right there just because of like the most insignificant move on the part of Godzilla. But I know a lot of people just died there. I mean, he sleeps in the Roman Coliseum in this movie. That tells you all you need
Too
to know
funny.
about Godzilla Kong, The New Empire. But it's great. I love the fact that everything is so healthy with the character, and Godzilla's booked and busy. He's generous to make enough time to come from a prestige picture to do this studio picture to say like, yeah, you know, we can do something for the mass audiences, we can do something for the box office. Godzilla might have the best agent in Hollywood right now, but great
Low
stuff
key.
all around. Can't wait to see what they do next. I'm sure we will get more movies from this franchise. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. If you've checked this out, hit us up and let us know what you think.